Hello! This is Hooked by Happenstance. I'm Kendra, and it is time for chapter 31 of Yarn Tales. Yarn Tales is my ongoing series here at Hooked by Happenstance, where I read books, I tell you a bit about them, and then I apply silly Kendra rules to my rating for the book and add a segment to my reading shawl. Now, my reading shawl grew from one shawl to two, and now we're on to our third shawl, which starts with the beginning of my reading from April. Chapter 31 that we are talking about today is actually the second book that I completed in April. We'll talk about that in just a second. The book in question is called Naomi and Elys No Kiss List by Rachel Cohen and David Levithan. And I was reading this via ebook, which I got from Libby, which is Overdrive's app on my phone. And I tried to read this book for about 6 weeks. I gave it a very good effort. I read a little more than 50% of it. But I had to keep renewing it and rechecking it out because it just didn't hold my interest. Now, I really wanted to like this book. I really want to like David Levithan's writing. This is the second book of his that I've had this issue with. I had a really hard time reading Will Grayson, which he wrote with John Green. I ended up DNFing that book last year, 2 years ago. But I wanted to read this one in the hopes that I would then read Nick and Nora's Infinite Playlist and, is it Lacey and Dash's Book of Dares? Something in Dash, Book of Dares, that he wrote with Rachel Cohen. And these are, YA books about young people in New York having kind of like silly adventures. There's usually a romance component. There's usually an LGBT component. Like, there's all of these things going on. And I really want to like these books. However, this book just didn't catch me. So I picked this book out of those three because I had seen the movie of this. I was looking for books to read, and under like YA romance is probably where it showed up on some like, there are some shelves that are put together on Libby that you can look through that are collections that have been curated by their librarians. So it's kind of like if you were to be walking through genre shelves in your physical library, you can scroll through digital shelves of like-typed books. I'm thinking that's where I originally put this onto my wish list. Because I realized that I had, from the title, that I had seen this movie. Now the movie is lackluster. I mean, it's one of those movies where you watch it on like a weekend afternoon and you're like, that was nice. Like, you don't feel like you want your time back, but you're not excited about having seen it. It's a 3-star movie. It's just kind of like, whatevs, I'm not going to tell people I saw it and be like, oh, you should watch it too. But if somebody, asks, I'm not going to be like, ugh, you watched that. It was just kind of in the middle. And the book is told from multiple perspectives. Every chapter is by a different person. It goes back and forth between a whole cast of characters. It is primarily around Naomi and Eli and their boyfriends and the people they're dating and the people who live in their apartment building. They have been friends for a long time, and they end up having a falling out. And it's like the going back and forth between what leads to that falling out and then the aftermath. And I don't remember how it ends for certain in the book because I DNF'd it. So, DNFing books, deciding not to finish them. That is something that I did not used to do. Like, I felt like I had to power through to the end of the book, even if I was not enjoying myself. But I have recognized, actually, because of a bunch of the crafting that I've done and embracing the frogging mentality of when something is no longer serving me, it no longer deserves my resource of time. The same is true for books. If a book is no longer serving me mentally or emotionally, then I need to just cut ties and be done with it. Which sometimes means that there are books that make me uncomfortable to the point where I need to just be like, no, this isn't good for me mentally or emotionally. Sometimes I'm just bored. And This should be something that's mentally stimulating, something enjoyable. I should be getting something out of a book. Yes, some books are difficult to read, and sometimes that is their value, but some books are just trying, and it's not worth it to me, especially when there's no, like, I'm not doing this as a buddy read of any sort. There's no redeeming value to finishing it for me right now. And by not finishing it right now, it does not mean I can't go back and read it another time. The book isn't going anywhere. It still exists in the world. I was done with my journey with it. So the question comes up for me, what do I do with DNF'd books as far as my reading shawl is concerned? And I set out parameters for this when I started my shawl because I knew this could be a problem for me. That I would maybe avoid trying new genres, new books, things that might seem outside of my comfort zone because I would run the risk of either having to suffer through a book to the end that I was not going to like, or I would stop reading it and then I wouldn't be able to include it in my shawl and that would bother me because it wouldn't be a full record, blah, 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 blah. So I decided that I would include a section in every shawl for every book that I DNF. So any book that I give a try and, you know, decide to count as having read it, then I also can DNF it and still give it space. What I'm doing with that is for every yarn that I use, there are 4 kinds of yarn. One for books that I experience with my kids, one for books from my Life's Library subscription where I get a new book every 6 weeks, one for physical books that I read by myself, and one for audiobooks that I read by myself. There's a yarn for each of those, and each of those also has a stitch pattern that goes along with the yarn. So for DNF'd books, I will use the correct yarn for the type of book it was, and I will do the patterned row. But as far as how do I handle the star rating portion, because ordinarily I do a row of textured single crochet for each star. And a DNF'd book gets no stars because I count DNF as something different. But what I'm doing is just doing 1 row of single crochet because it doesn't end up textured till the 2nd row anyways with the way that I'm working my pattern structure. So I just do that 1 row and I call it good and it's in there, and then I don't forget that I experienced this book and I can come back to it sometime if I want. But it's leaving me open to try new things. And by having that new mentality and reading, I have read and experienced some new books that I would have skipped over if I was just looking for things that like screamed Kendra. By trying some new things, I have found some books that I really enjoyed. I've gone on some little mental adventures that I would not have otherwise taken. So now let's take a peek at the shawl. The first 2 books of the shawl actually are using the same yarn. This is a Lolo Did It yarn on the Simple DK because this is going to be a DK weight shawl. And this is the color Tea on the Green, which is this nice like celery sagey color. I guess I'll hold it this way. This is the patterned row for Naomi and Elys No Kiss List. Here it is. And then, like I said, just that 1 row of single crochet to kind of finish it off so it will be noted. Now you can see the book before it was a 5-star book, so it will show me kind of my journey, my reading journey that's been going on when I look back at the shawl. So I'm looking forward to putting the next component on and getting to see how this kind of works in. I'm very comfortable with my decision. I think I gave the book a really good shot. It just wasn't for me. So you just have to accept that not every book is for every person, and it's no fault of the book, and it's no fault of mine. Like, I'm cool with that. So if you'd like to see the other chapters of Yarn Tales and see the other 2 shawls, you can go ahead and check out the playlist here on the channel. And if you don't want to miss out on any future Yarn Tales videos or anything else here at Hooked by Happenstance, subscribe to the channel because while I post regularly, I don't post on a regular schedule. So if you'd like them just pop into your subscription feed, that is the way to do it. I will see you all next time. Bye!